During the usage of assemblies, and particularly of large assemblies, it is necessary to load, view and modify files composed of thousands of parts, which might in turn already be complex on their own. Therefore, by applying light representations to some or to all X references, they will require less memory and graphical resources, and all the assembly will take advantage of this, becoming lighter and easier to load and view. Using this new command, we shall then be able to reduce the load time of files, and each X reference can optionally be loaded using simplified representations, and we'll also be able to define different simplified representations for each component in the assembly, thus gaining the right balance between light representations and graphics quality. Some of these can be created automatically, while others may require the user intervention. It is important to underline that light representation cannot be applied to local components, but only to X references. Okay, let us now load an assembly. Let's start the open command and set the file type to E3. Select the quick load option. With this box selected, if the file has never been loaded before, the program displays a message reading it is automatically generating the graphic representations of the flat tessellation type. It means that the components are represented with the minimum possible tessellation for their representation, while in the model structure the corresponding events are not displayed. The load of the file will be practically immediate with this quick load option, just because the light representations are already stored in the file itself. Despite their simplified representation, the parametric behavior of the assembly is preserved, and the parametric dependency works correctly. As for the mating events, with this type of representation, as you can see, we can redefine and modify the existing ones, but we cannot insert new ones. For example, if we select the multimode mating in the history tree, we can select the coincidence mating event and redefine. For instance, let us enter an offset value of 5. Let us close and we shall see the offset is applied. So 5 millimeters, we close and the offset is applied. Let us now suppose we want to replace this helix component with a different one. In this case, for the replacement, we need to have the component displayed through a full detail representation, which is the default one. So, light representation, full detail. In the same assembly, we can have components displayed in light representation and others in full detail. For example, we can right-click on a component and choose light representation full detail as we have done, in order to say we want this component, our helix, in full detail representation. And now we can replace it. Let us select the replace command by right-clicking on the component, and then we select the 4-blade helix with the mating events, because they have the same light representations. Once the replacement has been performed, supposing we need to work on other components of the assembly, we can reassign the flat tessellation to the component by right-clicking on it and choosing light representation flat tessellation in the context menu. Now let's work on Gruppo Carta group. Right-clicking on the Group Carta icon, the model structure, and choosing light representation fast tessellation, we can set an intermediate tessellation type higher than the flat one, which provides us with the hierarchy in the model structure, but still not showing the events. All of this obviously involves only visualization. As for the structure and the history of components, they are regularly stored and loaded inside the program. Then, if we select fast tessellation, an error message box will appear reading ever applying the light representation, since the fast tessellation representation for this component has not been created yet, and we can create it only starting from the from detail one. So we shall get back to the full detail representation. We shall create the fast tessellation representation, and from that very moment on we shall be enabled to directly pass from representation type to a different one, with no need to get back to the full detail one. Let's go back to Grupo Carter and let's set light representation full detail. Okay, here we are. Once we've done so, let us reselect the component and choose to create the fast tessellation representation using command light representation fast tessellation on Grupo Carburatore. Let's apply the fast tessellation. Now let's set it as the current component and confirm, which will reset the undo redo buffer. Now with the zoom window, let us enlarge the parts related to the carburetor and let's move it to the foreground with a small rotation. So once we have confirmed our modification, we are adding an edge fillet, as you can see, with a very small radius of 0.2 onto the selected edge, and we can confirm with the green button on top of the selection list. And now we are ready to reset current component. Let's now fit the view and then right click on Grupo Helica. The Grupo Helica shows up in the context menu. So if you choose right representation, you can see Grupo Helica inside the context menu. If we select it and then rebuild, the two-bailed helix group has practically become a light representation of the four-bladed helix group. Practically, the prior component becomes a possible light representation. Actually, if we select the component we have just viewed and set the flat tessellation, the program applies it to the replaced component, that is the four-blade helix. Among the several possible choices of light representation, we have Organize, which enables us to perform a number of operations of the selected component. For example, to associate another file with a simple representation. We can also edit the representation names, we can remove them, or we can choose one and apply it.